Good afternoon. So
And
as you mentioned, I am Phillip Hay. I currently work for or within the threat intelligence team as an analyst for Mimecast. Um, so you're happy for me to continue straight into the brief?
yes, please, Philip, that would be fantastic. And then we'll have a few questions at the end.
Okay.
So,
So first of all, who are Mimecast? Mimecast is an international company specializing in cloud-based email management for Microsoft Exchange and Microsoft Office 365, including security archiving continuity services to protect business email. We previously focused efforts on email security, but we are now moving to a more holistic security approach. For example, within threat intelligence, instead of waiting for the threats to hit our security landscape today, we're now developing our capability to identify the threats of tomorrow and then further afield in 6 months' time. We use our threat detection data to produce assessments in order to inform a decision-making process using timely, relevant, and actionable intelligence. I've recently been researching a paper entitled Potential Vulnerabilities to E-Learning, and today I would like to share some of those findings with you. So, how can email be compromised? The title states email, but in reality the elements we are about to discuss can be applied to an online footprint. Traditional thoughts about security have often left the responsibility with the IT department. This led approach demonstrates that security responsibility and the awareness spans across all departments of any given organization. It's not just a tick box exercise. So first, think of me as the criminal and how I may look to opportunities to attack your network or your computer. Starting with hardware in the top right-hand corner. How can I access it or use it to attack your network? Can I connect to your router, or better still, impersonate your Wi-Fi so your students or yourself can connect to my hardware and I can see all of your data and your passwords? Is there a firewall or a simple password for access? If I can control your hardware, is your data encrypted or can I steal it? Software. Can I utilize your email, which is the most popular vector by threat actors to initiate an attack? If I send a link attractive enough, i.e. through spam, will you click on it? Or can I clone your website and make it look legitimate to ensure you provide me your login for further exploitation? Or look at impersonation. Impersonate a teacher, a student, in a way so that I can trick you into providing me with more information. Are you an opportunity for me? Is your software patched on a regular basis? Is there an antivirus installed? People, as humans, we are naturally curious, and can I exploit this by enticing you to click on the link or open the email? What are your interests? What makes you tick? Can I learn this from social media and your social media profile, and can I exploit it? Do you know what the warning signs are? Do you know what to look for? Are you cyber aware, and do you receive regular training updates? Process. Do you have a security policy in place? Do you limit access to accounts, use password protection, and verify identities of users? If something goes wrong, do you have a policy? What would you do, and who would you call? Can I exploit this? And partners can support you by buying into your security procedure, which will support your security aims in the long term. So the key point of this slide, there are many ways to attack your network. Security is an ongoing activity that should be embedded deeply within your organization. Everyone should be aware of their role. Scale of attacks in the last month. So, part of my research was to actually identify, is education being targeted? Looking at the top graph first, the graph shows the number of attacks types and attacks in the higher education sector. So, over 657,000 detections in total, and in some cases more than 20,000 per day. As you can see, the dark grey colour is spam, which is clearly the preferred attack method throughout this period. Yellow is impersonation. Mimecast has observed a lot of emails sent with miscalled link or an attachment. This looks like it's legitimate, but when you look further into it, it's from an unknown source. which in some cases, if it is clicked on, will lead you to a spoofed web page or may make some kind of form of a request for information or a transaction. AV, which is maliciousware, and we also monitor URL clicks and attachments, but in this case, both are very low. If you're wondering, in case the Saturday the 4th of April is that peak, which really stands out, which may coincide with an announcement or an event that starts a new attack campaign. That actually peaks up to around about 50,000 per day on that particular day. Looking at the graph below, it compares a comparable sector which is similar size. The graph below is the government public administration sector, which shows a high number of spam attacks, which are slightly under the 20,000 mark. As you can see from the data here, higher education sector remains an attractive target for threat actors. Detected attacks on higher education. This chart shows April 19 to April 20. Starting on the left, the pie chart represents the types of attack. Again, spam has 9% of detections. 8% were impersonation, which is sometimes known as business email compromise, as we mentioned earlier on when we talk about the impersonation on attachments, and 2% was maliciousware. Using the higher education vertical as an example, analysis of this graph shows a significant increase in the number of attacks detected since April 19 and indicates a further increase around January 2020, which is highly likely linked to an outbreak of COVID-19. Between March and April 20, the education sector as a whole accounted for 2.8% of the observed attacks. On the examination, these detections showed us 87% are attributed to spam or opportunistic, which continues to follow the trend previous months. Analysis suggests the attack on the highest education sector on the rise and highlights the sector has a high risk of cyber attack during this period of uncertainty, particularly during and after COVID-19. Full-time education at home. For many students, when implementing COVID-19 mitigation measures, the result was change. Traditional ways of learning ended for teachers, students, support staff, and families for the foreseeable future. Conversely, in a bid to maintain an effective education system, a new style of school community had to be instituted, which resulted in students registering online, platforms and schools forums from their homes. In doing so, a potentially new set of opportunities for threat actors presented themselves. So what do we actually see at Mimecast? The education sector, again, accounts for 2.8% of the attacks over the last month. Increased phishing attacks, in some cases targeted due to social engineering via detailed partner life analysis, i.e. exploiting social media or digital footprints. This remains a top tactic for the threat actor. Mimecast witnesses activity constantly evolve with techniques changing on a very frequent basis to continue to trick the end user. This leads to further activity including impersonation, impersonating domains, subdomains, landing pages, websites, mobile apps, social media profiles. All of these are used many times in combination to trick the target, organization or employees or both, into surrendering credentials or other personal information for installing malware. Opportunistic attacks may use for a situation or an event, but they really do look at something like COVID-19, where there is a lot of uncertainty, and exploit the vulnerability via a form of spam, phishing, or malware in an attempt to expose or control sensitive data. Mimecast researchers and engineers anticipate their evolution and in future use and implement specialist analytics to detect and block them. Considerations. I've noticed some considerations you may wish to think about when setting up your online learning community or when you return to work. What access to technology is required to work effectively? What software and features are required? Can you control the access? Privacy in terms of agreement. Who will ensure the security and the technical support, particularly if something goes wrong? Only use approved software and systems. If possible, use your current software and systems that you're using in college or university. How will you communicate with the students? Streaming, email, web, all come with further considerations. Recommendations for e-learning. According to the UK government advice, a good place to start online teaching should be the same principles as set out in the school or staff behaviour policy. This should set out an acceptable use of technologies, staff-student relationships, communications including the use of social media and online distance learning. The use of online learning tools and systems should also be in line with privacy and data protection, GDPR requirements. So cyber awareness is a keystone to staying alert and vigilant against threats as criminals continue to monitor and exploit ever-growing social media landscape. But there are still many things staff and students can do to ensure a safe learning environment. So if possible, avoid using social media platforms for e-learning. Use strong passwords, ensure any default passwords are changed. And in order to support safeguarding students' learning, education authorities should only use systems that have been approved for use and have registered university accounts. Personal accounts should not be used as it can expose the individual to potential compromise or abuse. Administrators should ensure that the system software is configured to appropriate settings and permissions, such as enable speech, who can chat, who can start a stream, and who can join. We have mentioned link attachments to potential threat actor. If suspicious, do not click on it. Students may be exposed to email for the first time, which is probably more appropriate to younger people, but worth a thought. The email provider may be unfamiliar to the student. If so, then it makes sense to ensure a common understanding to use it safely. And finally, talk about online safety to ensure everybody is aware of the potential risk. So future concerns. So what does this mean to you? Cyber attacks are highly likely to continue targeting companies and governments and individuals with increasingly sophisticated tactics and techniques, including the use of progressively more complex social engineering techniques to trick their victims. However, even unsophisticated attackers can register domains that look like yours and use your brand as bait to target people who trust it. For instance, we've seen university websites cloned, students driven to a fake website where student credentials are stolen on login, and university was completely unaware that this was taking place. This is where Mimecast brand exploitation protection is an important consideration, which can be used to prevent this. As a consequence of all of these criminal activities, the most vulnerable members of our society will remain particularly susceptible to attack and compromise online. The increase in people working and schooling from home increases the size of the organization's attack surface, provides more opportunities for attackers to exploit, particularly the cyber hygiene slips as we work from home and with competing priorities such as work and family life. So a final thought. Cyber awareness is a keystone to staying alert and vigilant against evolving threats, but we're wary of an electronic communications received and be vigilant to potential for significantly increased social engineering or pattern of life analysis attacks that working from home and e-learning may present. So please stay safe and thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. That was a very interesting talk. There's no doubt that this presents phishing as a real issue. It never really goes away. It just comes in different campaigns. But given the current public lockdown, I think this is a new significant opportunity for attackers, as you mentioned, and they are doing everything to take advantage of what is a new. So people have to adjust, users have to adjust, and it's difficult sometimes for them to tell the difference between a fraudulent email and a real email message. But I think you touched on it. It's about users being vigilant, and there's a lot of user awareness and training. I think that we as institutions with users need to communicate with those users to make them aware. So I think communications is definitely a key to all of this. So thank you for all of those recommendations you put in there. I haven't seen any particular questions in the chat box, but what's been the sort of biggest challenge for yourself and your company, Mimecast, during this lockdown period?
So as I mentioned in the presentation, it's constant evolving threats. So, the threat actors are looking for different opportunities, looking for opportunities all the time. And then all of a sudden that we're all told to be locked down, working from closer together in a home, presents all of those different opportunities and new opportunities, and it's trying to stay on top of what the threat actor is going to think of next is a particular difficulty. So, and that then hits on, okay, well, how I'm trying to predict what the next threat vector may be, whether it'll be using malicious malware, or for us particularly, what's the next phishing going to look like? How are they going to do it? Are they going to use an image to try and get into your and use images, or are they going to try and use a link, which may not look particularly easy to identify? They're getting more and more complex, these phishing attacks, which is something that we're particularly seeing.
Yeah, I agree. And as we're going to be, I suspect, a slow return to what will be a new normal at some point when we come out of this, that's a long period where there is a changing landscape, and therefore new opportunities for attackers to exploit those. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon.
For your
presentation.